On March 15, 2014, Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon travelled from their hometown in the Netherlands to Panama. They were there to volunteer at the local school and improve their Spanish. Kris Kremers was 21 and Lisanne Froon was 22 years old. Due to a mix-up over dates, the girls were 2 weeks early, so they found themselves with spare time to explore Panama. They were staying with a host family in a town called Boquete as part of the arrangement. On April the 1st, 2014, around 10 a.m, the girls went on a hike up the Sendero El Pianista trail. They took a dog with them on the walk. His name was Blue and belonged to a local family in the village. A few hours later, when Blue the dog returned home alone, his owners were left confused. Why weren't Kris and Lisanne with him? As word spread to the host family, they were also concerned why Blue the dog had come back without Kris and Lisanne. They considered that the girls had gone on to some type of party and spent the night there. But as the days went on, Kris and Lisanne's parents raised their concerns because they'd had no contact with them either. Local people started to search the area and a police investigation started to gather momentum. The search was frustrated by the fact that Kris and Lisanne hadn't told anyone where they were going. Local people recalled seeing 2 young women matching the description of Kris and Lisanne heading for the Pianista Trail on the 1st of April. If they had got into trouble on the Pianista Trail, rescuers would be with them in a matter of hours. If they'd gone off the Pianista Trail, rescuers would be faced with the deep jungle of Panama. No progress was made until the 9th of June 2014 when a native woman found Lisanne's backpack by the Serpent River. The discovery of the backpack and its contents provided evidence of the girls' journey that day. However, it would leave rescuers with more questions than answers about what had happened to Kris Kremers and Lisanne Froon. The backpack was found to contain 2 bras, 2 pairs of sunglasses, a small empty water bottle, Sony camera, 2 mobile phones, Kris Kremers' iPhone, Lisanne Froon's Samsung, a passport, $83, and an insurance card. The photos from the camera showed that the girls had started their walk on the Pianista Trail at 12 midday on the 1st of April. The Sony camera contained over 100 photos, 10 of which were taken in the day and the rest were taken at night. Many found the night photos confusing, and there was much debate over their orientation and location. Were the photos taken downwards, sideways, or up into the sky? Were the girls trying to record something, or simply light their way? The 2 mobile phones were examined. Both Kris Kremers' iPhone and Lisanne Froon's Samsung showed there had been attempts to call the emergency services from 16:39 on the 1st of April 2014 onwards. It seems clear that something had gone very wrong on the 1st of April 2014 and Kris and Lisanne were desperate for help, but what had happened? From the photos, investigators could see that the girls were at the summit around 1300 on the 1st of April and all seemed well at that point. But the last few photos, which are off the trail and past the Continental Divide, appear to have a different feel about them. The path is not so obvious and this area looks more overgrown. Could it be at this stage that Kris and Lisanne simply became more adventurous and wanted to go further than they'd originally planned? Had this become a challenge for them to experience deeper jungle than the Pianista had to offer? Maybe they wanted photos of themselves in the deeper jungle. The most simple and obvious suggestion would be that Kris and Lisanne got lost whilst they were on the hike, and this is totally possible. They wouldn't be the first people who got lost in the jungle and perished. But the Pianista Trail is well trodden and obvious. Even when they did venture past it at the Continental Divide, the way back to safety should have been clear to them, and the harsher terrain of the jungle the other side of the Continental Divide would have indicated to them that they were going the wrong way. Is it possible they could have been walking in completely the wrong direction without even knowing it? And after walking the 2 hours to get to the Continental Divide, how much further could they have realistically wanted to walk considering the time of day and the minimal supplies they had with them? They would have intended to finish their hike before it got dark that evening and presumably be back for dinner somewhere. the night photos do look curious, and the questions arise. Why did they take so many photos in the dark? Were they taken by Kris, or Lisanne, or someone else? Did they use the camera to mark their location, use the flash to find their way in the dark, or use the flash to let rescuers know where they were? As mysterious as they are, one thing seems clear to me. These photos are taken in an upwards position towards the sky. These night photos were taken over 2 to 3 hours, and I don't believe Kris and Lisanne were mobile at this point. Because they were there for hours, I believe they either stopped to rest or were too weak to carry on, and the flashes were an attempt to attract the rescuers' attention. One photo shows a rock with sticks and sweet wrappers on it. Were they trying to indicate the direction they had travelled through the jungle? The backpack, clothing, footwear and remains of the girls were found along the riverways connected to the Serpent River. However, this distance is vast. There is doubt whether Kris and Lisanne could have walked to some of these locations. Why were all of the recovered items so far apart? Kris Kremers' jeans were found around 8 kilometres from the Continental Divide. They were said to be placed neatly on a rock. Lisanne's backpack was around 12 kilometres from the Continental Divide. And then, over 16 kilometres away from the Continental Divide, the last of the remains were found. A local guide said that Kris and Lisanne had booked him for a guided hike of the Pianista Trail on the 2nd of April. But for some reason, Kris and Lisanne went a day early without a guide. Why would they have booked a guided hike, but then go it alone the day before? This change in booking has led some to believe that the girls were lured there the day before, and then that person went on to harm them, knowing that he was the only person who knew where they were. I think the fact that they changed their plans is not suspicious, and this theory has nothing to back it up. Kris and Lisanne probably just wanted to save some money, and thought they were capable of doing the hike themselves. Kidnap and ransom. Someone unknown to the girls took them with the intention of getting a ransom for their safe release. But at some point during the kidnap, the plans went wrong and the girls were killed. Although wealthier overseas visitors have been the target of kidnap in this region, I think it's unlikely in this situation. A ransom note was not received and there is no other supporting evidence. Search for the dog theory. We know that the girls took Blue the dog with them on the hike. Maybe for whatever reason the girls became separated from the dog. They walked without him for a while, but later, around the point of the Continental Divide, they saw the dog again, but at this point he was off the trail. The girls followed the dog in an attempt to get him back on the trail, perhaps feeling some sort of responsibility for him. Whilst they were off the trail, they lost the dog again and became lost themselves. From that point on, they mistakenly walked deeper into the jungle, whilst thinking they were heading for the safety of Buket. Support for this theory comes from the fact that the girls went on the trail with the dog, but he does not feature in any of their photos. Is it because he had already gone off the trail at that point? Furthermore, the dog returned home alone, so it's clear they separated at some point. Abduction theories. It has been suggested that the girls were taken against their will by persons unknown. Someone forced them deeper into the jungle motivated by sexual violence and killed them sometime thereafter. If this were the case though, it would have been after the last daylight photos, as all seems well at that point. Supposedly, the abductors ran into Kris and Lisanne by chance. If the girls weren't lost by the time of the abduction, how could we explain the emergency calls? What sort of abductor would let Kris and Lisanne keep their mobile phones and camera? If this was an abduction, Kris and Lisanne must have got lost before it happened. The abductors were purely opportunists who saw Kris and Lisanne lost and vulnerable in the jungle. Occult cannibalism theory. In this theory, it is suggested that Kris and Lisanne were murdered by people practicing occult ritual or cannibalism. Although this is the most bizarre of all the main theories, it does get some support from the fact that some of the bones appear to have been bleached. As the bones would only have been in the jungle for about 10 weeks, experts would not expect this to happen naturally. Further support for this theory comes from the lack of bones found. Out of what should have been 2 full female skeletons, search teams only found Kris's pelvic bone, Lisanne's foot still in a sock and boot, 33 bones were found in total, but 28 of those were metatarsals from Lisanne's left foot. Where were all of their other major bones, such as their skulls? Fall theory. The Panamanian government stated that Kris and Lisanne had reached the Serpent River during the hike. They must have attempted to cross it in order to reach the other side. The only way across is a monkey bridge. The monkey bridge is made up of 3 cables, which a person needs to balance themselves on as they cross, like walking a tightrope. The government concluded that the girls had fallen into the Serpent River, causing significant injury or death. The fact that Lisanne's backpack, Kris's shorts, boots, and some of their remains were found along the general area of the Serpent River back up this conclusion. Some of the belongings, particularly Kris's shorts, the backpack, and its contents, appeared in good condition. Why were there no signs of wear and tear consistent with a long hike and being dragged down the Serpent River? How were the electricals, such as the mobile phone and Sony camera, in good condition without water damage? Kris Kremers' injury theory. At some point around the 5th of April onwards, Kris Kremers sustained an injury that made it impossible for her to continue walking, or the injury was so severe that it killed her. Evidence for this is the fact that incorrect attempts were made to access Kris Kremers' mobile phone from the 5th of April onwards. If Kris had been fit and well at that point, she would have been able to access her own phone. So it is most likely, at that point, it was Lisanne trying to access Kris's phone, because Kris was unable to. If Kris was badly injured or dead at this point, it would have left Lisanne with an impossible decision. Should she go on for help or stay with Kris? Apparently, when the Sony camera was examined, one of the photos was found to be missing. Digital photo 0509 was no longer on the camera, yet the photos either side of it were. Why would one of the photos be missing? Would Kris and Lisanne have bothered to delete one of their own photos? Apparently, image 0509 was removed with computer software so that it was permanently erased. This led some to suspect that the killer had featured in picture 0509 and that he'd had to subsequently delete it. I don't think this is very likely. If the killer was in one of the photos, why would he not just destroy the memory cards? That would be easier and more certain, rather than messing around with a computer trying to delete a single file that may be brought back at some point by a computer specialist. I can only assume that photo 0509 became irretrievable another way, like a fault on the memory card.